Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Suraj, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. I'm sorry, it's not morning. It's already good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon to you all. So let us start our class. So can anybody from you please recall what we have completed in the last class? Yes, somebody? Yes, anybody? Can you please tell me what we have completed in the last
Your
class?
voice is breaking.
Yes, Gurman? Yes, Gurman, please tell me till how much we have completed?
So field is completed and unit vector is going on.
Sibun, field is completed. We have started with vector algebra,
Yes, sir.
addition and subtraction. That's it.
No. Yeah. Unit vector, addition and subtraction.
Okay, fine. So today we will just try to complete this introductory chapter, and once we complete, we will directly move on to the next chapter that is in our syllabus, that is Coulomb's law. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. So right now, Acha, by the way, please everybody, please be with a pen and paper and calculator because today I will be giving you a problem and don't think that you can escape without doing this problem because you see, as I told you that I am not going to solve the problem in the usual way that you have been solving it in your plus 2 level. Moreover, the solution to this problem is given in the book, but the way I will solve the problem that is going to be completely different. Okay, and at the end, you people will realize that I am going to give you a method which is going to yield the result in a very simple manner. Without much effort, you will get the answer correctly, and that too in a very precise manner. So please be attentive. If you don't have a pen and paper and calculator with you, you can go and bring and please be ready with it because we solve this problem. And as I told you that the method that we will adopt to solve this problem is going to be different, and it is not going to be found in any book. So please try to learn the process how we are going to solve the problem. Okay, fine. So let me start with my presentation. So in the last class, by the way, is the video visible to you all? Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So last class we were okay, fine. So last class, let us just recall what we have studied. So we have studied that almost all the quantities in this universe can be classified into five main categories: scalar, vector, phasor, tensor, and field. Out of this, we are not going to talk about tensor because it is not required for us. But all the other four quantities are of importance to us. Scalar, till now you people have been dealing with scalar. Then you of course have much idea about this vector. So another one which you people already know, but right now it will be introduced abundantly, that is your phasor quantities. So when we will go towards the end of this syllabus, there is one chapter on alternating current, and over there, this phasor is going to be of utmost importance to us. As I told you that phasor is a rotating vector, but the name itself is a little bit misleading. Misleading in the sense is that it is not actually a vector which is rotating. It is actually a waveform or a quantity which is going to change its magnitude with respect to time, but that change is always going to stick to a particular equation, or it is going to have a constant function. For example, the AC voltage that you people have studied in your schooling days is that in that case your AC voltage can be depicted as V is equal to Vm sin omega t. So whatever be the position of the waveform, it is always going to follow that function. Secondly, it is going to repeat the same type of waveform over a period of cycle, over continuously over a cycle, number of cycles. So the only two examples available for phasor is the voltage and current. Last we studied about the fields, and over there I told you that field is a designated area within which any particular quantity is going to follow the same rules. For example, as I told you that in case of gravitational field, whatever be the height of the object with which from where you are dropping a object, in that case the gravitational pull or the gravitational acceleration is going to remain the same. So if that quantity is a vector quantity, then the field will be known as a vector field. Similarly, if the quantity is a scalar one, it will be known as a scalar field. So I have given some examples, and I believe that you people have understood it. So that is what we have studied in the last class. Next we talked about the unit vector. As I told you that unit vector is a vector which is going to define or which is going to give the direction in which our original vector is moving. Suppose the original vector is moving in the x direction. So obviously your unit vector will be a x cap, or simply we can write it as I cap. Now, why it is known as unit vector? Because unit vector is going to have a magnitude of 1. That means it is not going to alter the magnitude of the vector, but it is definitely going to show you or give you the idea in which direction the original vector is moving. So this is all about your unit vector. Now we have already discussed that your vectors are usually represented in Cartesian coordinate system. I am just going to for the review. I have not started the chapter. So as I told you that your vector is usually designated by a vector with an arrow over here. But remember, it is wherever you are seeing this bold capital letters, please consider it to a vector. Usually what happens, your vectors in Cartesian coordinate systems are given in two ways. Either it will be given in this type of way, that is in between bracket you will write all the components along the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, or you can simply write it as ax, a I cap, a y j cap plus a z k cap. So in place of I, j, k, now onwards we will be making use of these symbols a x cap, a y cap, and a z cap. Remember, these are vectors, whereas this AX, capital AY, and capital AZ are scalar quantities. Now, I have also told you what is the physical meaning of this vector components. They actually indicate, in order to reach a vector from the origin to the tip, what is the distance you have to travel along the different axes. Those distances are known as the components of the vector. So this is what we have already discussed. Now, and secondly, another important thing that you people already know, I am just repeating it, that is how to find magnitude and direction of a vector. Suppose A is a vector, then A mathematically will be represented like this. Okay, the magnitude part of this A vector. So this is the magnitude part, and since it is a vector, obviously it is going to have a direction. So the direction part is given by this A cap. So over here we have defined, or mathematically how you can calculate the magnitude as well as the direction is given by means of these two formulas in Cartesian coordinate system. Obviously remember that these systems are only Cartesian coordinate system. In practice, actually there are three types of coordinate systems: Cartesian coordinate system, cylindrical coordinate system, and spherical coordinate system. But these are only limited to other types of waveform, and they are not in your course. So we will only consider the Cartesian or rectangular coordinate system. So this is whatever we have studied. This is the thing we have already covered. Now again we have discussed about the vector addition and subtraction. So I am not going into it. Now let us move on to what is position vector. Okay, so I hope I have have I covered this position vector? Yes, anybody? Have I covered this position vector in the last class? Okay, fine. Let me explain it to you once again. So previously what we were doing is that we were representing a point in space, okay? We are representing a point P in the space with its coordinates, okay? So let us say the coordinates are X, the coordinates are Y, and the coordinates are Z, okay? Now, in our engineering, particularly when we are going to deal with this electricity and magnetism, many quantities, many times we will be dealing with quantities which are vector quantities, and obviously their position in the field must be defined. So when we are talking about the position, obviously we have to give the position by means of the coordinates with respect to the origin. So instead of writing the point or the location in this manner, rather we will designate the position by means of something known as position vector RP. So RP is very simple to find out. This you suppose the coordinates are x, y, z, and it has started from the origin. So the position vector, always remember, is calculated from the origin. Okay. So in this case, since origin has the coordinates 0, 0, 0, so finding the position vector is quite easy. Simply what you have to do, component by component, x component of P minus the x component of the origin. So it comes out to be x, and simply you have to put a x cap. Similarly, you can also find for your position y. So y minus 0 is again y a x cap. So finding the position vector is very simple. So always remember that now onwards, instead of mentioning the location by means of a point, we will always mention, or will designate, or will represent the position in terms of position vector. Next comes your distance vector. Now sometimes what happens, suppose in many cases when we deal with this electric field and other things in the today's class, we will see that the distance is going to matter a lot. Okay. So in order to find the distance, we also make use of these position vectors. Okay. So previously what we are doing? Now previously very simply, if there was one point P over here with the coordinates A1, A1, B1 and C1. So if point P was having these coordinates and another point Q was having the coordinates, let us say P, Q, R. So let us say it was having a position or coordinates PQR. So finding the distance was very easy. What we are doing? P minus A whole square, Q minus B whole square plus R minus C whole square root over. So that was the way we were finding the distance. But now, since we are dealing with vector quantities, instead of calling it as distance, or we instead of finding distance, rather we will find the distance vector. So distance vector is nothing but it is represented by RPQ. And please remember this, writing this RPQ, you have to remember that the first letter in the subscript is going to be the source from where you are starting, or rather I will say it is the starting point of the vector. And the other second alphabet, which is Q over here, represents the terminating point or the point where the vector P is present. So in this case, your RPQ vector is given by, very simply it is given by RQ vector minus RP vector. So this is going to come as, so we can represent this PQ directly like this. Okay. Now remember that the modulus of this distance vector is going to give the distance between P and Q. So please don't get confused. The very simple thing, instead of representing the location by means of the coordinates, we will define that location, or we will represent that location by means of its position vector. Similarly, in order to find the distance, or in order to dot the distance between 2 points, rather than calling it as distance, we have to find the distance vector. Okay. And suppose from distance vector, we can also find the distance by just taking the magnitude part. That's it. Okay, so next comes the other part of the vector algebra, that is a vector multiplication. Okay, so as I told you that the vector multiplication can be done between two or more number of vectors. Okay, so actually when we are dealing with two number of vectors, there are two types of product or multiplication that is possible. One is the dot product, the other one is the cross product. Okay. So if A is a vector and B is a vector, then there are two types of multiplication. One is the dot product, or sometimes known as the scalar product. The other one is the vector or the cross product. What does that mean? That means if A is multiplied as a dot multiplication, that means here we have to represent the multiplication by means of a dot sign. So in this case, the resultant or the product of these two vectors when multiplied in a dot product is always going to give you a scalar quantity. Okay, please remember the dot product is going to give a scalar quantity. Similarly, if I am going for the cross product, okay, so two vectors A and B, when they are cross multiplied, the result is another vector quantity. Okay, but in case of scalar, it is going to be a scalar quantity. Next comes your scalar triple product and vector triple product. Please look at this particular format. This format is very important to know. Now what we have written over here, it is a vector dot, then starts the bracket. The bracket is of utmost importance to us. Okay. If we are not going to give the bracket, then sometimes it may result in very absurd result. Okay, so if I am not using the bracket, then this particular thing is meaningless. It's meaningless. Okay, there is no meaning to it. Okay, similarly over here, if I am writing A cross B cross C, and if I am not putting the bracket, this is also going to be meaningless. Okay. So obviously these brackets have a very important role, and you have to give the bracket in this manner. So if there are three vectors which needs to be multiplied, okay, then there are only two possible ways of multiplying. One is the scalar triple product, the other one is a vector triple product. So first write down the first vector dot, then A vector cross B vector. Now why I am giving stress on this particular term? It is because when B is cross multiplied with C, it is going to give you another vector D. Okay, so A vector dot D vector is going to give you a scalar quantity. So always remember that whenever we are going for scalar triple product, you have to write the vectors, three vectors in this fashion. You have to put the bracket side, and ultimately the resultant or the product is going to be a scalar quantity. Whereas if there are three vectors and we are going to multiply them as a vector triple product, then you have to write it in this manner. So when you are going to write it in this manner, obviously what happens? B cross C results in another vector D, and A vector when cross multiplied with another vector D is obviously going to give a vector quantity. Okay, so please don't get confused with all these things. These are the standardized format and you have to follow it. So over here, let us, you all know all these things, but still then I am going to go a little bit, some important points I want to mention, maybe you have forgotten. So when I am talking about dot product, okay, now I am only talking about dot product, not scalar triple product. So when two vectors A vector dot B vector are multiplied as a dot, then what is the formula? Modulus of A vector, modulus of B vector cos theta AB. And please remember this theta AB. Theta AB is very important. Remember, if A is a vector and B is a vector, and in between them there exists an angle theta AB. Okay, this angle is theta AB. Now, obviously, in between these two vectors, actually there are two angles possible. One is this theta AB, the other one is this theta dash AB. Now, out of these two, you have to take the one which is smaller in magnitude. That means this theta AB is nothing but the smaller angle between the vectors A and B. That means suppose this is a vector and let us say this is the B vector. Okay. So how you are going to find the dot product? Simple. You have to bring this one, this end and this end must be at the same point. That means you have to move this B vector parallelly to this one and present it over here so that the two starting points are going to meet. Now this angle and another angle is this one. So out of this is the smaller angle. So you have to take the value of this smaller angle and put it over here to get the answer. So usually we can follow this method. Another way we can multiply if the components are given. So the components are given in this manner: AX, AY and AZ. These having the components BX, BY and BZ. So when we are going for a dot product, finding the answer is very easy. So corresponding components you just multiply and add them. So over here I have represented over here in this manner. So AX, BX plus AY, BY plus AZ, BZ. Now AX is a scalar quantity, BX is a scalar quantity, AY is scalar, BY is scalar, AZ is scalar and BZ is also scalar. So all these scalar quantities will get added up to give you a scalar quantity. Okay. So next comes your cross product. Okay, whatever I taught, are you comfortable? Everybody understood? Is there anyone who have not understood these things? Okay, fine. So now let us revisit what we have studied in cross product. Okay. Now cross product, usually it is sometimes many students I have seen they make a lot of mistake. Okay. Now what is this cross product? when A vector is cross multiplied with B vector, it is going to result in another vector. Okay. So what is the formula? The formula says we have to take the magnitude of A vector, magnitude of B vector, then we have to find the sine of the angle theta AB. So what is this theta AB? We will talk about it. And remember, as I told you that A vector cross B vector is equal to another vector C. Okay. Now obviously this C is going to have a magnitude part as well as a and means direction part. Now the magnitude part is given by this A vector modulus B vector modulus sine theta AB, and the direction of the vector C will be given by this AN cap. Are you understanding? Yes, is there any doubt? Someone please respond. Yes? Someone please respond. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Uh, okay. So as I was telling you, your cross product is always going to give you a vector quantity, and that vector quantity, as you all know, that every vector quantity has a magnitude part and a direction part. So over here, this is the magnitude part. A vector modulus B vector modulus sine theta AB is the magnitude part, whereas your AN cap is the direction of the vector product. Okay. So over here, that is what I have written, where AN is a unit vector perpendicular to the plane containing A and B. Okay. The direction of AN cap is taken in the direction of right hand thumb when the fingers of the right hand rotate from A to B. Okay, forget about this. Now, let us try to understand all this AN cap, because many times my experience says many students always have a doubt in this particular case. Now, just remember that whenever in any vector product or anything you are coming across this sine theta IB, sine term. Previously you were having a cos term over here. Now you are having a sine term. So this sine term over here, one important thing always remember, you have to see in which direction this theta AB is oriented. Please remember what I am saying. Sine, because your cos theta, now look over here, cos theta is same as that of your cos minus theta, cos of minus theta. So it doesn't matter in which direction you are taking the theta. Now what do I mean by the direction of an angle? Just look over here. Suppose this is a plane and this is another plane. Suppose, sorry, ray. Suppose this is let us say R1 and this is another ray, that is R2. Now, if I am moving from R1 towards R2, then the angle is in the anti-clockwise direction. And remember, in engineering, theta when taken in anti-clockwise direction is considered positive. Okay, that means if I am moving from R1 towards R2, then your theta is going to be in the counterclockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction, and in this case the theta is considered positive. Whereas if I will move from R2 to R1 in the clockwise direction, then in this case your theta is taken as negative. So please remember this important thing, because in which direction you are taking the theta, that results in the theta being positive or negative. And in case of your cos term, it was not a problem, because cos of theta is same as cos of minus theta. But in case of sine theta is not equal to sine of minus theta. So you have to be very careful about it. Now, Another thing, okay, so here what is written? This part is going to give you the magnitude and A cap is going to give you the direction. Fine. So AN is the unit vector perpendicular to the plane containing A and B. So let us say this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. Let us say, and this one is your z-axis. Okay, this one is your z-axis. Now, obviously, your A vector and B vector, both of them are along the xy plane. Okay. Now, what is that axis which is perpendicular to the xy plane? It is nothing but your z-axis. Now, obviously, when I am going to cross product or I am going to multiply A vector, B vector as a cross product, okay, then the direction of the new vector will be along the z-axis. But whether it will be along the positive z-axis or it will be along the negative z-axis, who can say? Who can say? Now, because on a plane, suppose there is a plane like this, right? So, if let us say this plane, this is your x-axis, and let us say this is your y-axis, and this top one is along the z-axis. Okay, so this is the plane, and over here I have this A vector and I have this B vector. Now, the direction of the cross product of A vector and B vector will be along the z-axis or perpendicular to the plane. So there are two perpendiculars possible, one along the positive z-axis, the other one in the negative z-axis. Now, obviously, a vector cannot have two directions simultaneously. So, we have to pinpointly find out in which direction the direction of the cross product will be pointed. Now, how to find it out? So, in order to find it out, please remember we have to take into consideration the direction of this theta IB. So, this theta IB is a very important term. Now, everybody, please be very attentive to what I am saying. Okay, let me erase all this thing. Now, just look over here. When A vector is cross multiplied with B vector, okay, then the formula says sine theta AB. Now, if I will write B vector cross A vector, then in place of sine theta AB, I have to write theta BA. So, there is a difference between them. So, which one should be on the left side of your cross product or cross mark and which one will be on the right will determine the correct direction of the vector. So, in this case, we have taken that A vector cross B vector. So, remember this theta AB, that means in this case, just look over to this particular diagram. So, A vector is over here, B vector is over here, and this angle is directed from A towards B, okay, and it is in the anti-clockwise direction. Now, doesn't matter whether it is in anti-clockwise direction or clockwise direction. Now, how to find the direction of the cross product? For that, the simple rule is there. That is your right hand thumbs rule. Now, very simply, we can say if you people stretch your, please everybody do the same thing as I am instructing. Stretch your right hand in such a way that your thumb is perpendicular to all the other four fingers. Okay. Now, if you will place all the four fingers along the B vector and you will rotate or curl your finger towards B vector in the anti-clockwise direction. Because here you can see the theta is directed in the anti-clockwise direction. So, you have to rotate your fingers along from A towards B. So, if you are doing it, you can see that once the thumb is made, your thumb is pointing upwards, that is along the positive z-axis. Can you see it? Just do it yourself.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, you stretch your right hand, okay, all the four fingers will be perpendicular to your thumb. Place all the four fingers on the A vector and rotate it towards B vector. Okay, why? Because A cross B vector. So A is written first. So if it is written first, then you have to rotate your fingers from A vector towards B vector. And when you will do this, you will see that your thumb is pointing along the positive Z axis. Similarly, if I am going to write B vector cross A vector, now what is going to be the change? Now you have to place all your four fingers along the B vector and you have to rotate your fingers towards the A vector. Now if you are doing it, then you will see that your thumb is pointing downwards, that is along the minus Z axis. Can you see it? Do it and feel it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is how you are going to ascertain, because the problem is that in cross product usually the students get confused. Actually, I am getting two number of perpendiculars for this suppose A and B vector are present in the xy plane, then obviously you will get two directions, two perpendiculars, one along the positive z axis, the other along the negative z axis. But the problem is that a vector is always directed in a particular direction because it is a vector, it has a constant direction. So naturally, it should either be along the positive z axis or negative z axis. Now, how to ascertain it? In order to do that, you have to make use of this right hand thumbs rule. So I hope you people have understood it. So this is all about this formula. Now suppose your A vector and B vector are given by means of their components. Then how you are going to find out the cross product? Now this is what you have already studied. You have simply remember this matrix and everything is going to bear the result. So all the I cap, J cap, K cap, or rather I will say AX cap, AY cap, Z cap written in the first row, followed by AX, AY, AZ, BX, BY, BZ. So in this way, you are going to get the value of this A vector cross B vector. So this is what I have mentioned over here. So I feel everybody have understood it. We are just going through, means what I say, we are just going to revise what we require to know before venturing into our original syllabus. So these fundamentals are very much important. That is why I have taken 1.5 class to revise all these fundamentals. Please don't take it lightly. Just go through your textbooks of your plus 2 mathematics and have a look at all of them. No need of doing problems, because problems, when we will study about our syllabus, we will talk about the different problems, and over there we will make use of all these vectors. Okay. So now let us come back. So this is chapter number 2. This is actually the starting of your syllabus. Okay. So your chapter, this is actually in the textbook, it is chapter 21. Okay. So the first chapter is electric charge and electric field. Okay. Now, here I have written that, okay, first we will have to learn some important features of this chart. We have to get ample knowledge about this chart, because in the along this entire syllabus, we have to study about this charge a lot. This charge is going to matter a lot to us, whether it is electrostatic field or whether it is electromagnetic field or it is going to be your alternating current. The concept of the charge is going to be utilized everywhere. Even in case of magnetostatic field also, we will make use of this electric charge. So if we are going to talk a lot about this electric charge, we must have ample knowledge about what is this electric charge. Okay. So very simple, simply we'll start two fundamental properties of matter. Okay. So all this entire universe is made out of particles. Particles or matter. Now, and this particle or this matter is going to have two very, very fundamental properties. One is the mass, the other one is the charge. Okay. Now, every particle in this universe is definitely going to have mass and it is going to have a charge. Why? This charge is, we are not going to talk much about this mass because mass we are not very much interested in our syllabus. We will rather talk in detail about this charge. So charge is considered as a fundamental property of matter. Now the question is why? Yes? Any idea? Why this charge is considered as a fundamental property? Yes? Come on. If you and tell me whatever you know. Any guesses also you can do, no problem. Nobody.
Because matter is formed of atoms which have electrons and protons and neutrons, which are nothing but charges.
Okay, so if that's correct. No credit to you because I have also written it over here. So no problem, but you have answered it correctly. So every particle in this universe is made out of atoms. Okay, and you all know that an atom is definitely going to have some neutrons or is going to have some protons, that is positively charged particles, and some electrons, equal number of electrons. Okay, that means since everything is made out of atoms and atom itself is containing proton, electron, neutron, some subatomic particles, so obviously over here we are talking about this proton and this electron, and obviously they are going to have some charge of their own. They are going to have some polarity. So naturally this charge is very, very fundamental to everything in this universe. Okay. Now, as I told you that the atom is made out of positive protons and negative. Yes?
Sir,
Yes.
but why
Yes?
mass is, sir,
Uh,
mass, why not only mass is the fundamental property?
okay, fine. Let us talk about that.
Why
Now,
not only mass? I'm saying.
okay, I understood it. I understood. Just look over here. What is light? Can you tell me? What is light? Light is an energy.
Energy
Acha, Einstein gave a very beautiful equation. Everybody knows it. What is that?
E is
What is
equal to
that?
mc square.
E is equal to mc square. Can you depict practically what does that mean? Practically what does that mean? That means if there is something, let us say I have a ball.
Energy and mass are related to each other.
Pardon?
Energy and mass are related to each other.
Obviously, E is equal to mc square, c square is a constant, so obviously it is going to be energy. Now, practically, okay, if we will think, if suppose in your hand you are holding a pen, the pen is going to have some mass. Let us say it is going to be 15 gram. Now, to this 15 gram, if you can propel at a speed of 9 into 10 to the power 16 meter per second, that means twice the speed of light. Sorry, 2 means square times the speed of light. Then this particular mass is going to behave like an energy. That means it is going to have so much of energy that, and moreover, this energy can be transferred into different forms. That means this mass can easily be converted to energy. Not easily, it can be converted to energy. Okay? Are you getting what I am saying?
Yes.
You didn't get.
Yes, sir.
You got it. That means suppose there is a particle or there is a mass. Okay? And you are making this mass to move at the speed of c square. Okay? Then this mass is totally converting itself to energy. We exactly don't know which type of energy it is going to, whether it will be thermal energy or whether it is will be behave like an electromagnetic energy. We exactly don't know because we have never conducted this experiment, and it is not even possible to means throw a mass at this high speed. Okay, so obviously one thing is very much confirmed that mass can be converted to energy, right? Yes or no? Got it? Hello, is my voice audible or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now just take the question of charge. Okay. Now if a charge is made to flow or pass through a electric field. Now we'll talk about all these things during our syllabus, and I will show you that when we are placing a charge inside a field, then it is also going to move. And when it is going to move, it is again going to be a flow of energy. Okay, so energy is only related to mass and charge. Got it? Are you getting what I'm saying? That both mass and charge are fundamental because they are the fundamental of energy. And every object in this world, in this universe, do have some energy of their own. Can't you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we will not waste much time about all this detail. But the thing is that both are very fundamental property of matter, mass and charge. Okay, there are this charge is considered as okay. That is what I have written over here. Now, proton. Now, proton is positively charged and electron is negatively charged. And moreover, you know what is going to be the charge of a proton. So, a proton is 1.6 into 10 to the minus 16 coulomb. And this electron is minus 1.6 into 10 to the minus 19 coulomb. And this is the standard value of charge. Okay. All the particles are another important thing about charge or any matter or any particle in this universe is that all the particles always tries to be in an electrically stable state, always try to be electrically, okay, I have missed out the word, electrically neutral state. Okay, so all particles always try to be in an electrically neutral state. What does that mean? That means everything in this universe will always tries to be in the state of minimum energy. And as I told you, charge and energy are related. So whenever there is a charged body, naturally the energy of that body increases. Now, since everything always tries to be the least energy state, therefore, it will try to either lose or gain some charge from anywhere around it in order to become electrically neutral. So, what is this electrically neutral state? For that, we have to understand that if total positive charge is going to be greater than total negative charge, then the body is considered to be positively charged. Similarly, if negative charge is greater than positive charge, the body is said to be negatively charged. If positive charge and negative charge are both in equal number, then the particle or the body is considered to be in an electrically neutral state. Okay? Okay. Can anybody tell me whether it is easy to get a positively charged body or a negatively charged body? I'll just think to means a logical question I'm asking. Can anybody tell me whether it is easy to get a positively charged body or a negatively charged body? Who can say?
Positive, sir. Positive.
Okay, that's
Positively.
correct. That's correct. But what is the reason behind it?
Sir, in rubbing we lose electrons.
Yes?
Sir, in rubbing we lose electrons.
Okay, by rubbing you lose electrons. Okay, but why? Simply by rubbing you can take out some electrons. How is it possible? You are absolutely correct. You have studied in your schooling days that by simply rubbing a glass rod with that of some silk or some abrasive material or cloth, you can simply wrap out the electrons and make it positively charged. But the thing is that why by rubbing or by friction you can charge the body, and that too you can make it positively charged. Now what is the reason behind it? Very simple thing. Yes, tell me.
because electrons revolve around the atom and it is not
Electrons, once again.
revolve around the atom. It is not inside the atom. It's not the main mass.
Okay, you are somewhat correct, almost 80% correct. That's good. What is your name?
Mika.
Okay, but here I will tell you that of course this electron is not the central mass. Okay, now I will explain why it is very easy to wrap out or take out the electrons by friction. For that, there is a very simple reason. Very simple reason. Now, suppose let us say this is a glass rod. Not a glass rod. You can take anything. Let us say this is a. You can take your ruler, okay, but not metal objects. Okay. Now, suppose I will rub. Now, what happens? Positive and negative charges are present everywhere. Now, remember that in case of atoms, your electrons in the valency bond or valency shell, that is in the outermost orbit. Okay, they are in the outermost orbit. And secondly, all the positive charges are centralized. That means they are towards the center of the atom. Number one. So whatever you told is correct. Now, the most important reason is that these electrons are very much lighter. Okay, they are very much lighter in comparison to the positive protons. Okay, that means these electrons are very light, and therefore simply by rubbing it, by applying some mechanical stress, and moreover since they are in the outermost orbit, therefore you can simply take it out by application of this mechanical forces. So simply by applying or rubbing with a piece of silk, you can simply pull out these electrons from their valency or from the outermost shell. They are not only light, but they are also easily available on the outside of the atom. For these two reasons, it is very much easy to take out the electrons. So when the electrons are taken out, then what happens? The total number of positive charge becomes more than that of your negative charge. Therefore, in total, I can say this body becomes a positively charged body. Okay. But it is very difficult to take the positive charges. It is very easy to take the negative charge, but it is very difficult to take the positive charge. Therefore, usually what happens, a body can easily be positively charged, but not negatively charged. I hope everybody have got the answer.
Sir, I have
Yes.
a question. Uh, the electrons are very light, so they get easily transferred from one surface to another. But why they are getting transferred to one surface only? Why aren't they moving to the other surface? Why one surface is getting positively charged when we rub two surfaces
Okay.
together?
I got
Why
the
one-
answer. I got what you were actually saying. Okay, let me tell you, explain it to you. Now, suppose I was telling that let us take a piece of your ruler scale that you people use in your geometry box. Now, if you will start rubbing two number of scales with each other, is it possible that you can rub out the electrons from both of them? It is not possible, but you have to choose a particular, you have to choose two heterogeneous material. For example, in this case you are choosing a piece of your plastic scale, the other one is a piece of cloth. particularly silk cloth, or your what that is known as satin cloth, because these types of material, this satin cloth and these types of silk materials, the advantage is that they are abrasive in nature. If you will start rubbing it in your palm, you will see that instead of a cotton cloth, if you will do it, you will feel comfortable. But if you will start rubbing with a piece of silk cloth, you will feel the pain. That means when you are using two heterogeneous material, the one which have the capacity to, or which is having a little bit more frictious surface, that is going to pull out the electrons easily. Why? Because you are applying more mechanical stress on it. Now look over here. How I explain this one? This is already in the outer section. Secondly, they are loosely bonded because they are at the farthest distance. So the only force that is binding them is the this force of attraction or nuclear force. Now over here you are applying a very strong mechanical force by means of this scrubbing. So when you are applying this force, mechanical scrubbing force, is more than the force of attraction, and therefore it is moving away. Now this is the one which is present on the surface of your scale, and the surface of your scale is a very smooth one. So in most of the text you have studied that they are giving the example of a glass rod and a umber cloth. Okay, they will never give you the example of a, let us say, a wooden stick and a cotton cloth. They will never give, because in both the cases the surface is smooth and it is very, it is not possible, or it is somewhat difficult to apply enough mechanical scrubbing force to pull out this outer electrons. But every time if you will move one smooth surface over a rough surface, then it is possible. Are you getting what I am saying?
Yes.
Yes, everybody? Have I cleared your doubt or not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next, let us now move to the properties of charge. Okay. Okay, it's already time, so we'll stop our class over here. So next class is tomorrow. Acha, let me tell you, everybody, you all are from section 9, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is section 009. All students are also belong to 9.
Also belong to?
9. All students are 9 6.
Okay, that's nice. And now my request, there is a request for you people. Tomorrow we are having a lab, online lab from 2 to 4. Okay?
Yes, sir.
From 2 to 4. And
Yes, sir.
since it is not possible practically to, means you people just can't come to the lab to perform the experiment. So what I have done is that I have prepared some videos. Okay? I have called some of my MTech students, they have recorded a video, and in that video I have given the demo, the first-hand knowledge that you people require to carry out the experiments. So it is around 1 hour 20 minutes of video. The problem is that when I am playing it on this laptop, the voice is very less in intensity. It is not very much audible. The only thing we can hear it, or you people can hear it, is just by inserting some speaker or amplifier. Do you have it at your home? Some Bluetooth speaker or some small speakers? I hope
Yes, sir.
many of these must be
Yes,
having.
sir.
Okay, please, when you are using your mobile or your laptop for this lab, please insert these speakers to your jack, because the voice is a little bit less audible. It is audible, but it is not very much clearly audible. The intensity is very less, so we need some amplification. So kindly, please don't forget, please bring your speakers, or if you have any amplifier, or you can simply connect it to your television by means of this Chromecast, means this casting, anything you can do, but do it in that way, because it will be very much, the video will be clear to you, and moreover the voice will be a little bit louder, so that you can understand it. Now I will also be listening to it, and you people will be listening to it. Anybody having any sort of doubt during the course of the playback of the video, you please tell me. I will pause the video and I will explain it to you. Okay? Is it okay?
Sir, what about the demonstrators?
Pardon? What about the
Demonstrators.
demonstrations? Don't worry. I will also make videos because let me be very frank to you. Just I will be participating. The net over there is not very. The network is not very good. Otherwise, I would have taken my mobile and while performing the experiment itself, I would have taken the class by performing the experiments before you. But that is having a problem because the network over there is not very good. So we may have some disturbances. So I felt that it is better. I will perform the experiment. I will do the experiment for you people. Detailed thing I will tell you how to connect, what are the equipments, everything detail I will try to do. I will record it and I will play it during the lab class. The only thing is that you have to use an amplifier to amplify the voice signal. Okay, and I will try means I will give the best of myself to make you understand. So please cooperate. This is a time when everybody needs to cooperate with each and everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will stop our class over here. From next class, we will study about the charge of this charge, properties of charge. Then we will study about this Coulomb's electric force law. And over here, we have to solve some problems. So here I have done some problem. So you are having your next class from 1 to 2. Another important thing. You are having your class from 11 to 12, right? Yes, hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you are having your lab from 2 to 4. So your lab class will start maybe 15-16 minutes after 2, maybe around 2:15 I will start the class because tomorrow is a very hectic day for me. I have a class from 11 to 12. Your class is from 11 to 12. Again, section number 11, it is having its class from 1 to 2, and from 2 to 4, I have the lab. So, in between a class and a lab, there is no gap. So, obviously, I will be tired and I have to travel all the distance to the lab itself. So, it is going to take some time. So, 15 minutes after 2, we will start the class. But you people, please be online at 2 o'clock. You people please be online at 2 o'clock. I will join you at 2:10 or 2:15. And please be ready with your speakers, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you everyone. So we'll conclude our class over here. Let us meet tomorrow. Have a nice day. But before that, just be online so that I can take a screenshot. You people can.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. You people can
Yes, sir.
leave my class.
Yes, sir. Now another class is there, sir.
Yeah. I meant to say I have to stop the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.